project. You'll have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff will then present their report. We will then ask for public comment. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the commissioners will ask questions in the same order as the presentation. Next, the applicant will have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. After the public hearing is closed, no further testimony can be given. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on Chapter 27 of City Code of Ordinances, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review Committee comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence cell phones. And I'll start on my left for the introduction of commissioners.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Post. I am the public policy representative to the commission.
Brian Hammond, architect.
Dan Myers, architect.
Elena Paris Ketchum, attorney member.
All right, we also have in attendance our staff: Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Elaine Lund, Aminta Owens, and our attorney, Dana Crosby Collier. All right, so I'm going to look for a motion for minutes from the November 4th.
Move acceptance of the November minutes.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this evening's public hearing, the last public hearing for 2024. As such, we will not be, it's not necessary to hold a hearing on Wednesday, December the 4th, so that meeting will be canceled. I do have the administrative approvals to enter into the record. Those can be accepted by motion at the end of the meeting. Those are provided to you for the prior year's administrative level approvals. Prior to our preservation in progress, I just want to just take a moment to recognize Aminta Owen. I think a lot of you may know Aminta from over the years. She's been with our department for 23 years, about 20 of those in the Historic Preservation Division. And she wasn't aware I was going to do this, but she is going to be retiring at the end of this year. So I wanted to take a moment and recognize her and thank her for her service and being part of the preservation team with the city and an integral part. A lot of what she does is behind the scenes, but I can assure you that you benefit from her efforts and the city benefits from her efforts for many, many years and over many, many dedicated hours. So we're going to miss her. We appreciate her. We're going to enjoy her for the next couple weeks, and then she will be off exploring adventures in her new RV that she and her husband recently purchased. So. And that's a hard act to follow, but we'll try to do a little bit of a job for preservation purposes with our installment of Preservation in Progress, which Elaine will be presenting this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. Our Preservation in Progress segment for this month is going to be about the 7th Avenue re-bricking. The presentation, let's see, get that up.
There you go.
Okay. So this is a project that's been in the works for quite a while, and the ultimate goal is to restore the the brick road along 7th Avenue from Nucho Parkway to 26th Street within the Ybor City Historic District. So far, 2 blocks have been completed from 15th Street to 17th Street, right in the heart of the commercial district. This is just a photo of the brick lane from 1910. So the restoration of the bricks will be very appropriate for the district. Some of the bricks were removed when the tracks were pulled up, and then some were removed later in the 1960s during an urban renewal, which had a big impact on the entire 7th Avenue corridor. The Ybor City Design Guidelines do address brick as an appropriate paving material. And this project has been funded by the Tampa CRA, and roughly 80,000 bricks were used for these 2 blocks. So the bricks are collected, stored, and maintained by the City of Tampa in accordance with the city code. And they are prioritized for historically significant projects such as this. Bringing back the brick not only enhances the character and feel of the historic district, but it also provides natural traffic calming and promotes walkability in the historic district. There's a ribbon cutting event shortly after the bricks were installed along that first segment. And then just to show you another picture, historic picture of the brick streets in Ybor City.
So I wanted to add that that had been a long time goal, and it really, I think, began to gain momentum under Mayor Castor's administration, where we recognized that restoring the brick streets was an integral part of preserving the character, the visual qualities of 7th Avenue. And a lot of different individuals throughout the administration came together, both in mobility and historic preservation and with the community redevelopment area, to promote this project and to make it happen. And I think it's something that the community has really rallied behind. So we're energized. We're looking at the next 3 segments right now, moving east along 7th Avenue, and hopefully in the near future be able to come to you with a amended presentation that shows those segments as well. So it's a good project, and I think it's something that I actually had doubts that I was going to see it within my career, so it's very happy to see it really taking shape along 7th Avenue. So with that, I think we're going to move to our disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, and we will have that led by our legal counsel.
Good evening, Dana Crosby Collier from the City Attorney's Office. I'd like to ask if any member has had any ex parte communication about any item on the agenda this evening.
I have
None.
Okay, thank you. And has any member, do you have a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda this evening?
None.
Okay, thank you so much.
With that, we are ready to move on to our continuations. We have 3 continuations that need to be acted upon, and we will need 3 separate motions because they all deal with separate dates. So the first one is a continuation to the future for ARC 24-336. That will have to be renoticed at a future date for a specific public hearing date.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to continue ARC 24-0000336 at 1703 West Jeton Avenue to a future hearing.
Second?
Second.
All right, here in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The second is a comp plan amendment recommendation, ARC 24-273, also referenced as TACPA 24-11, which is being requested to be continued to our January 6th public hearing, January 6, 2025 public hearing at 5:30 PM.
I'll move to grant a continuation for ARC 24-00000273 slash TA CPA 24-11 to January 6th, 2025.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And lastly, ARC 24-312, 711 North Franklin Street, requesting to continue to February 10th, 2025 at 5:30 PM.
I move to continue ARC 24-00000312 regarding 711 North Franklin Street to February 10th, 2025.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And just to clarify, that time is 5:30 PM as well.
Thank you.
And with that, we are ready for our swearing. Anyone in the audience who's going to be presenting or providing testimony this evening, if you could please stand and raise your right hand, including staff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you will be giving today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And we are ready for our first case, and Mr. Vila will introduce that case.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ron Vila. I am a planner with Historic Preservation. Our first agenda item is ARC-24-000/REZ-24-00000104. This is for the address of 402 South Oregon Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. On that site, there is a contributing structure that dates back to 1930. The underlying zoning is RM12. The request is for a recommendation to rezone from RM12 to the PD. Under your duties this evening, if you look on page 3 of the staff report, chapter 27-113, your duties and powers are as follows. With regards to the application for rezoning, is to review and recommend reasonable land use changes to the extent necessary to preserve the historical integrity and appearance of the site, and looking at the district in totality. This time I'd like to share some photos with you. This is starting with the 1929 Sanborn map. The area that is highlighted in the red here is the local district. The district used to end on De Leon. We extended it to the north. The neighborhood came and asked us, it was a joint venture, to look at the fabric that was in that area. There was enough fabric for us to extend the district to the north. So the property in question is now in the local district of Hyde Park. I circled it here so you could see it. This was before the interstate was here, and you see the concentration of the fabric that's there. This is our vicinity map that I wanted to show to you. Once again, the highlighted in red is the local district. The blue is the national district. You have jurisdiction within everything within the boundaries of the local district. Property in question is on the north quadrant within the Hyde Park Historic District, and then you see that the interstate kind of came in here. So the historic fabric that was there in 29 to the north has been removed by the interstate. Here is a current day aerial. It's the last structure on Oregon. There is an alley that runs south, and I'll go through that later on through my additional segment that I'm going to share with you. But this is the property here. You see some historic fabric here that's interwoven with some new construction that was outside of your jurisdiction just until 2023 in January as the district expanded to the north. And then you see some new construction to the west. This is the contributing structure that dates back to 1930. This is the front elevation. As we look to the front that faces Oregon and to the south, there is a little bit of land there that is part of the PD request today. They are requesting to put new construction in this area here. And as you continue down Oregon to the south, you have a series of homes here. This was or is a contributing structure that has an addition. You see new construction that was interwoven into the district that was not reviewed by this board. And then you see another contributing structure. Going back to the subject site, you have the front elevation and the north elevation as it is in shadow. This is a Zeal here. Looking from a Zeal back at the contributing structure. This is the north elevation and the rear. When they come forward with the site plan today, you'll see that there's an addition to the structure here. This is just continuing of the backyard and how the vehicular access comes off that secondary street, which is a Zeal. This is looking down a Zeal to the east. This is FDOT property. And the intersection of a Zeal and Oregon, how it dead ends to the interstate. That completes the staff, the photo presentation, and I'll have the agent address the board.
Good evening, Commissioner Steve Michelini, representing the property owners and petitioners for a recommendation to the Tampa City Council regarding a request for a rezoning. This area is zoned multifamily, as Ron has pointed out. It is not a typical south of Swan Avenue single-family residential area. So you have a number of examples of multifamily throughout this area. It also used to be called Dobyville, which had a number of smaller lots, which were encouraged by the community for housing for the working members of the service staff throughout Hyde Park and South Tampa. I want to show you a picture here. The original site was completely obstructed by vegetation here, and then after the vegetation was removed with permits, this is the result of that house. We're proposing to restore the existing house and then add an addition to the rear. Although we're not here on design issues, I just thought I would show you that we have fully reviewed this with the city staff, and we've incorporated all of their suggestions regarding the design for the addition as well as for the new construction. This is the front of the proposed additional unit. And again, if you look throughout the Hyde Park area, you see a number of additions that look just like this. And there's a, oh. Let me go back here. Can you see that now? That's the existing structures. We have some handouts here. The existing structure with the addition in the rear. And again, the staff, although we haven't submitted for the design yet for a full staff review, it has been fully vetted with them, and we've incorporated what they have asked us to do. These are typical elevations of the proposed new structure. And I think in Ron's presentation, he showed you similar structures with similar designs. Now, as I said, this is in what used to be called Dobyville section. We have a Zeal, which is to the north, and that buffers any of the potential adverse impacts that we might have going to the north. We have multifamily to the west, and the two adjacent property owners that would be most likely affected by this rezoning and the request for the allowances have both signed letters of support, and they're included in the package. You see, both of these designs are very similar to what we're proposing. And here's, some more examples. Now, we have also analyzed the data from the block, and we are consistent with the block development pattern that's there, including this. Our lot is actually larger than many of the other ones. Some of them are 35 feet, some of them are 40 feet, and they all have single units on them. You have that diagram in your package as well. These units have all been split up. This is the block that we're talking about, and they have added 3 units to each of these lots, and not just the 2 units. There seems to be some confusion. We're not talking about a lot split. You're allowed to build 2 units by right, and what we've asked for is the ability to renovate the existing structure and add an additional structure to the side. That's not a lot split. This is multifamily zoning, multifamily land use, not single family like in other areas of Hyde Park. And we've also supplied you with the Polk directory showing that there previously were 2 units there. And the property history card from the property appraiser's office showing you the same thing. The blue pens these are support letters from neighbors in the immediate area. Our property is up here, and those are support letters that are also included in your package. The new construction is 27.6 feet wide and 77 feet deep for the total square footage of 2,126 square feet. The blue pens are showing lots that have less width, the red are less depth. So you have inconsistent lot sizes and development in this area. Now, as I said, there seems to be some confusion about what we're proposing. This is the traditional Hyde Park area, large lots, large structures. They are not in Dobyville. This is in the main part of Hyde Park. Those properties are zoned, they have a land use designation of R10, and they have a zoning classification of RS60. This one has a land use designation of R20 and a land use, a zoning classification of RM24. And we've supplied you also in this package with a number of supporting letters that are copied for you there. As I said, this has been fully vetted by staff. We've worked with them for over 6 months on the design and placement of these structures. And it should not be compared in any way to single-family traditional areas when it has a land use designation, a multifamily, and a zoning that is compatible with the request for 2 units. So we're not asking for a waiver for the 2 units. They could be built by right. The only thing that we're asking for is the ability to go forward with the design that we're being presented to you. The setbacks, as I said, the 2 property owners that are affected by the setbacks have letters of support in your package. We also are reconfiguring the site so that it saves a tree per the request of the land use section and the natural resources. We're across from the roadways on the north and the west side, so there's no adverse impact there. And we're, as I said, we're restoring the existing historic structure. And as the staff pointed out to you in their presentation, there are other examples of adding an addition to the rear of a contributing structure. So there was a lot of consideration given to restoring the existing contributing structure and placing a sensitive addition to the rear so that it would have minimal impact. We also changed the side treatments of the proposed new addition so that it would complement the area and comply with the Hyde Park guidelines. The guidelines are broad enough to respect different types of land uses and different types of zonings. And we had worked with the staff to review all of that. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware that we're not asking for considerations of those. We'll be bringing those design considerations back to you should this project be approved and the recommendation going forward be in favor of us going to rezoning and that the city council adopt that. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not confused about what the ultimate goal here was. We can build the 2 units by right. What we're really talking about is the design compatible and is it worthy of your consideration to be forwarded to the city council with a favorable consideration? I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioner. Ron Avila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Working on the staff report and sharing some research with you. We do have somebody from Land Development here, if you have some specific questions, that they can answer those. There are some letters that are in your packets. We received 3 letters of opposition and 10 letters of support. They're in there for you to review. As part of this request moving forward, there were no waivers that they're coming forward with. Once again, your duties and powers on Chapter 27, Section 113 is to review with regards to the application for rezoning, to review and recommend reasonable land use changes to the extent necessary to preserve the historic integrity and appearance. Staff found that this application is consistent with that section with the following conditions. We have some conditions on page 3 of the staff report, is for them to provide an analysis of the front yard setbacks established on that street. They have a diagram. If you need additional information, I'm sure they could share that with you. To look at the final parking solutions on both sites to make sure it's consistent with today's standards. This is in the expansion area and it has to meet the Hyde Park design guidelines. And on their PD plan, there's a reference point that they call out a PVC fence, which is something that we don't support. That should be stricken from the record at this time so it doesn't move forward and gets confused as it continues to the city council. So here's the 1929 Sanborn map. So the district used to end here and here. In January of 2023, we extended the district to where it's illustrated now, to Azeel. Which is here. Property in question is circled. So what I wanted to share with you, and I blew it up, I wanted to share this block here. This is block 2 of this subdivision. There's an alley that runs north and south, but if you look at the corner parcels, you see how they have a dwelling unit. This dwelling is indicated with the D, and yellow is indicated that it's frame construction. Currently, the house that we saw in the photos is here. The empty lot is here. So they're reestablishing a structure that once, a parcel that once held a structure there. If you look at the corner units here, they have a dwelling on each of these that have an orientation in a different direction. So this parcel doesn't go from the primary street to the alley, it stops here. This one doesn't go all the way to the alley, it stops here. This one does the same, and this one does the same. So there is historic fabric of what's happening in this immediate block. And I can share that with you. And it also goes to the next block as well. It goes over here, and it goes over here. So for some reason, and this is in 1929, so you have the historic fabric, you have the historic pattern that's established. That's why staff is saying it's consistent. The property in question does not have access to the alley, so they're gonna come off the primary street for the new construction, if it moves in that direction, and for the existing structure that's here, they're gonna come on off of Azeel. There is, this parcel, it negates the ability for them to come in from the alley. So I wanted to share with you the challenges that they have and the pattern that's established. This is in 1929. If you look at the current aerial, it still exists today. So this is the structure that's there, that's on the corner of Azeel and Oregon. This new construction has a different orientation, but you see the size of this parcel, as illustrated in the testimony that Mr. Michelini gave, does not go from the street to the alley. So it's bifurcated here, same thing down here. They put a house here that faces Horatio, and this lot is smaller than all the interior lots, as well as this one and this one here. It's hard to see on some of them with the canopy of the trees, but you can see the pattern is here and here and here. This is a block face on Oregon. Property in question is over here. I just wanted to share with you some of the parking challenges that this area has. Parking in the front yard is prohibited by your standards. So currently they have to park here. And I don't even know if this meets any transportation standards because the sidewalk is here, so they're parking across the sidewalk. But these substandard lots have a challenge for parking. They're trying to do the best they can. There is parallel parking on the side as well. The request that's coming in front of you this evening has 2 cars on site to meet transportation standards and the City of Tampa code requirements as well. So I wanted to share that with you. This is here, if you need to refer back to it. We do have land development here, and I'm here to answer any questions. I believe the public's gonna speak now, and we do have one public waiver form as well. So at the timer's right, I have it here, and legal will address that issue.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Is there anyone in the audience that is here to speak for or against the project? If so, we'll come up one at a time. Please state your name and spell your name. I believe you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Chimino. I live at 604 South Oregon Avenue. I'm the land use chair for the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, Land Use Committee. The boards of both HHP&A and Spanish Town Creek voted to recommend denying this zoning change. For years, HHP&A envisioned expanding the local historic district, which was embarked upon seriously with the reorganization of Spanish Town Creek and with our funding. The neighborhoods were intent on preserving the strip of remaining Dobyville, a historic African-American community that at one time extended past Kennedy to Cass Street. The area suffered from erratic land use and historic structure destruction and inappropriate infill fueled by speculators. We are not interested in cultivating this type of development or change in land use. I will say that the information submitted implied that this is splitting a lot. I guess it isn't, it's a single lot, it's a single parcel, so something has to be done, and I guess they're using a PD to do that. So no matter what, there did not exist a house of this dimension on that parcel. It had access to the alley behind it. And so this is not exactly historic for that parcel. And it appears the original land had 2 lots from Oregon all the way to the alley, and it was divided up. We don't consider this parcel a restoration of the historic fabric because that particular area went all the way to the alley. And we are concerned that natural resources found that it was inconsistent with Chapter 12 for lack of green space, which we consider a bad precedent given the recent flooding from storms. I'm confused if this parcel does or does not meet under RM12 having two structures on it. Because if that's the case, why are we here for a rezoning to a PD? It's because there is a problem. It's consolidated. The typical Dobyville homes were diminutive. This proposal dwarfs the contributing structure on the parcel as noted. And it has little to no setback on three sides and no backyard. It's like fitting a size 14 foot into a size 10 shoe. We will oppose this at City Council and recommend the committee do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's coming to move my pictures so I can just concentrate on talking. I too am a little confused because what I saw, well, let me start by telling you my name, I'm sorry, because I'm confused. I got the extra minute too, okay? I'm Pam Canella.
Okay. Pam Canella has a form. Virginia Smith has agreed to waive 1 minute, waive her time to allow Ms. Canella an extra minute. So is Ms. Smith here? Okay, thank you. So Ms. Canella will have 4 minutes.
Okay, do I start over?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, like I said, I am confused because my research showed that everything focused on putting another home on that lot by what is there, the contributing home. And that is what I'm here to oppose. I have no problem with preserving the home that's there on a lot the whole lot, not a partial of that lot. So I am asking that this proposal request for rezoning be denied. This property is located in our historic district, a community referred to as Dobyville. This area is the last remnant of a neighborhood with historic significance to Tampa's growth. Although the applicant has shown that there are other lots in this area where 3 to 4 homes were allowed, they do not set a precedence for your decision today. We cannot change these past decisions, but you can protect this neighborhood and this property from this rezoning change. This is a non-conforming lot, 65 by 77. Due to the fact this original parcel was previously allowed to be split to accommodate 2 homes, 402 South Oregon and 1405 Azeel, with 404 South Oregon no longer existing on that lot. Or, it's not anywhere, okay? I don't even know, the address is non-existing. So to ask for another rezoning would be an unreasonable land use change from RM12 to PD and is inconsistent with the Chapter 27, Section 27, 113, A2J. The proposed lot site is required to have sidewalks on Azeel and South Oregon per Chapter 22, 103, with 5-foot sidewalks and 2.5 feet, I'm sorry, did somebody say something? And 2.5 feet minimum of green space between the sidewalk and the street. This would place the front of this new home too close to pedestrians' walkways. The rezoning site plan for this proposal is inconsistent with Chapter 27, Natural Resources, which requires at least 25% of the lot as green space. The proposed home, again, I'm talking to the home that we didn't see today up there, are required to have space for 2 cars. And this is also the old home that's there that's going to be renovated. Each lot is required to have spaces for 2 cars. Tampa Building Code allows for 10 feet minimum width for residential driveway, but 12 feet is recommended to accommodate the large vehicles. I believe this site plan shows only 9 feet. Again, this is for the new one that they're proposing to build. The driveway for the proposed home does not allow space for 2 cars side by side. Inconvenience usually leads to street parking, and none can be provided without violating parking codes. No guest parking has been provided either, hence parking issues. This proposed new home may look like it fits the guidelines under historic preservation, but it does not. And it does not fit on this very small parcel of land or in this unique historic community of Dobyville that the residents of this neighborhood and the city of Tampa fought so hard to preserve. Now, I have a picture that you all probably saw of the, do I still have time?
I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cannella, I'm sorry, can you please give your address for the record?
604 South Orleans.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jennifer Stylen, and I also was a bit confused about the planning. I'm against, this here. So I'm against rezoning and dividing property located at 402 Oregon Avenue. Hyde Park does not need additional density. The best option is expanding the existing structure would be more suitable than squeezing in 2 separate homes. The house located at 608 South Orleans Avenue was expanded from its original small historic structure to a beautiful home that recently sold for $1.6 million. The property at 402 Oregon Avenue does not have its original alley access, so therefore garbage cans would have to be placed out front on the street for pickup. There's virtually no real street parking available since it is a corner lot. The law requires parking to be 15 feet away from a stop sign, an intersection, and 10 feet from a driveway, leaving it as one property would allow for adequate owner and guest parking. On November 21st, Thursday evening, my neighbor and I walked to Hyde Park Village to enjoy the festivities surrounding the Christmas tree lighting. We left the village at around 7:45 and both witnessed multiple road rage incidents. There were heavy lines of traffic on Swan Avenue in both directions. Vehicles were passing each other at sudden high speed to reach the intersection first, to make a turn and secure a parking spot in the parking garage. We did not feel safe crossing the street in the dark under such conditions. Of course, there were pedestrians coming and going. As we walked home, we noticed one street alone, several parking violations. We decided to take some photos to show you what happens when density has reached its limit. And that's what we're concerned more about at least I am, about the parking situation by squeezing so many homes in a lot like that size. So this was that one evening, the cars parked in front of a driveway. This one parked in front of the, partially into the alley. This car was parked right at the corner. This car was trying to turn, had to make a 3 or 4 point turn to just try to get in there. And we could have made so many more photos of that. But that's what we see all the time when there are events in Hyde Park, which is almost weekly. So just, if you approve this, just please approve something where there's going to be guest parking and the owner's parking.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, can we get your name and address for the record,
It's
please?
Jennifer Stylen at 602 South Orleans Avenue.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tara Nealon. I'm at 1405 West Azeel Street. I oppose the rezoning of 402 South Oregon Avenue as it contradicts the character and principles of our historic neighborhood. Having lived in HHPNA for 13 years before moving to Spanish Town Creek in 2020, I value the walkable streets, the green spaces, and the historic preservation that defines our communities. This proposal undermines those values and promotes erratic land use. 3 key concerns. 1, allowing the parcel to be rezoned opens the door for uncontrolled use of the land. 2, the applicant includes several examples in their application claiming to bolster their case. I hope the commission recognizes that, quote, eclectic development patterns of the neighborhood, end quote, and the, quote, similar developments, end quote, listed were built prior to the building being to the area being designated in the local historic district. This parcel is a half a block to the Dobie House, the namesake of Dobieville, my house. One of Tampa's original black neighborhoods lost to structural deconstruction and erratic land use. I have no faith that the rezoning will lead to an endeavor that respects the historical context of the neighborhood. It is important to protect spaces and preserve integrity of our historic neighborhood. Please deny the request to rezone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak for or against this project? Okay, not seeing anyone, we will move on to commissioners' questions, and we'll start with on my right. No, that's after we ask questions.
So I have a question for land use, who I guess is here. Hi, so the application before us is to rezone, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Sam Thomas Development
Development
Coordination.
In your words, what are they asking for to rezone from and to?
They're requesting to rezone from RM12 to planned development for 2 single-family detached homes.
And what is the purpose for that rezoning?
Usually when you're asking for a planned development rezoning, it's because you need relief from the code, such as being able to set your own setbacks, which is the case for this one.
And if it was left as it is, are they able to build 2 structures, as was stated previously?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
They would have to do a Euclidean rezoning to a higher multifamily zoning district.
I'm sorry, they would have to?
They would have to rezone to, they could do a Euclidean rezoning to RM18 and be able to do 2 units by right, but under the current RM12, they cannot be considered for 2 units.
So if I'm getting this correct, if they leave the current zoning as it is, that plot of land would have the 1 structure, would be permitted the 1 structure only.
Yes, ma'am.
But by going to the PD, that opens the door for them to put the 2 structures onto that piece of property.
Yes, ma'am. They have 2 routes to go, either rezoning to PD, or they could rezone to RM18, assuming they could meet the RM18 setbacks,
Okay.
which I don't think would be possible.
Okay, and then I have a question for Ron. Okay. So how, with it, are we here today for the rezoning or for the design?
It's a rezoning. The certificate of appropriateness will come at a later date. So you're here to look at the placement of the structures, the setbacks, and the overall massing would be established. That's why they provided those models.
Okay, so we're not here today to look at the existing structure, what the additional building looks like, what the new proposed building looks like. We're not here on that today.
Not what it looks like, the placement of it, the setbacks to the property line, and the overall bones of the building.
Okay. Do we know when this property was combined into 1 parcel?
I don't know when it was. Sam, do you have any knowledge? But, I go back to the illustration that I provided you here. This is what I use as my basis to say it was consistent. We have Oregon, we have this whole block. They're putting a structure in the limited size that was there in 1929. If you look at the setbacks that are established on this block face, and you look at, this is Dobieville, so you look at the scale of the buildings all in here. This is very unique. You don't find this anywhere else in Hyde Park. So this illustration, I think, is very powerful to show the orientation of some of the structures that are here, and then the orientation of some of the other structures that were put here on the corner parcels, as I stated, to bifurcate those parcels. The interior lots didn't receive any lot splits or things of that nature. It was only on the corners, and this is back from 1929, so the pattern has been established.
And then, do we know the existing structure that's there now? When was that, what's the date of that structure?
We're saying it's circa 1930 with our research. So it's not.
In that
It's not here,
location?
it's right here, that's correct.
Right, so in the thirties, that structure was put there in that location?
That's correct. And I don't know when this one was removed, but, you know, you see a larger structure with a smaller structure within one parcel. You see two structures within one parcel. You know, it's not uncommon in this particular area, so you have to focus on what this area is telling you.
So the parcel that is gonna have the additional structure, what's the dimensions of that lot? Do you know?
65 by, what was it?
Where the new structure is going to be, this,
You have that dimension? That's the whole one, what's the frontage of almost 25 by 70,
No, Ron, it should be 27 and a half. Yeah.
so the owner's telling me the frontage is 27 and a half, and the depth?
The depth is the overall depth of 77.
77.
So are there any other lots on that street that have frontage of 27?
You have that research?
Yeah.
Why don't you share that with the commissioners?
So I have a chart in the packet that I had given to you guys. I should have put page numbers in here, but let me pull it up.
I was about to ask what page number, but that's okay.
There's a map that looks like this with blue and red pins, and I can put it there, just like this.
Oh, there we go, okay.
So, on our block itself, so what I've done is, I'm pointing to the parcel that we're discussing today, right now. I've put blue pins on lots that have less width, and I've put red pins on lots with less depth. So, on our, right adjacent to our property, which is 406 South Oregon, that lot width is 26 feet wide.
That's the blue house?
Yes.
Right next door?
Right next door,
That parks in front?
correct.
Okay.
And then on Orleans, where I have the other kind of blue dots listed, we've got a 27-foot wide lot at 411 South Orleans, which is a contributing structure as well. And then we've got a 22-foot wide lot at 417 South Orleans.
So I guess going back to the 406, which is the neighbor,
Mhm.
right? Their property goes all the way to the back alley?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers?
Can someone tell me how much green space
Yes.
is allowed? Or how much green space is produced in the proposed
So-
configuration?
Again, wish I had page numbers, but I'll put this on the projector and then I'll,
On the site plan.
so page 3, page 4. So it's really tiny here, but if we look at the site data in the top right section,
Okay.
and we've kind of got it, yeah, zoom in, okay. Right here. Yep, perfect. Okay, so as you can see here, where the existing contributing structure is, the required green space is 710 square feet. We've provided 1,251 square feet there, which is 25%, which is exceeding 25%. And then on where we're proposing the new construction structure, the required green space would be 531 square feet, and we're providing 819 square feet. So I can Both of them are meeting the requirement and exceeding the requirement for the green space.
We're in the rezoning process. We're not asking for a waiver of green space.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, while you've got that site data,
Yes.
sorry to jump in here. What are you going in and figuring green space? What's included? And let's look at the new lot.
It has to be green.
So
It can't be
not underneath
artificial,
the
can't be
driveway.
a sidewalk, can't be a driveway. It has to be green, living space.
Okay. And then one more question about width. You're saying the lot width.
Yes.
Show me on this site plan how you're coming up with 27 feet.
Sure.
'Cause I see 19.4,
19.4, that's the building.
I see 3.2, and then I see 3 feet.
Correct. I think the 19 and 4, I think that's showing the actual of the internal, not the exterior walls. And if you look on the site data map, we have right here that the total area for the site is 2126. So if you take that 2126 and divide it by the depth of 77, that's what gets us to our lot width. And I can get some clarity from our architect on that, but I believe that's the case for that missing square footage of the width that you're referring to.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Commissioner Hammond?
That's okay. I have a question about, I'm not sure who it's for, but the structure that is immediately to the south, is that one a historic?
Blue house you're talking about?
Yeah. Is that a contributing structure?
It's a contributing structure, yes.
Okay. Do we know the distance off of the property line from that one along the north edge? I mean, it appears to be about
3 feet, 2
or
inches, so we have runs.
Under the old code, Commissioner, that would have been 3 feet before they changed the codes to 7.
Okay.
Historically, it was 3 feet throughout the older districts.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for the presentation. So I think I understand what you're trying to do here. It does seem like there is a lot going on the space. So I want to come back to the conversation about the PD.
Yes.
And the reason why planned developments exist and how they provide for a certain amount of latitude to do things that you may not otherwise be able to do under strict reading of zoning or future land use designation. So can you just speak for a moment specifically which of those requirements, and I think we're discussing several of them, many of those that you would not be able to achieve but for the PD? I think setback, green
Setbacks,
space.
but we're actually providing 2 parking spaces, as you can see on the site plan for the proposed new construction residence. We're actually providing an addition to the contributing structure, and that addition consists of a 1-car carport. So we'll have 1 car that right now is parking just on grass, that'll be covered, and then 1 parking space outside of the carport. So there would be, for each structure, 2 parking spaces.
But you're pushing the limit on things like setback, green space.
Yes.
You would not qualify under
Yes, for
Euclidean.
it's really setback oriented, the PD is.
It's very unusual, and maybe a question to staff. How many PDs exist within the historic structure? Any? I'm not aware of any, but
How many PDs exist within the historic district?
within the Hyde Park Historic
I can't give you a
District.
number, but I can show you a zoning map of the surrounding area so you can kind of see what other PDs are around there. So this is the subject site right here, and then you can see there's a number of PDs in the surrounding area, even across
So
the street
that-
is a planned development.
Right, but those all occurred before the district, before those areas were historic?
Yes, ma'am, to my knowledge.
Yeah, understood. Are we aware of any PDs in the historic district, before this was incorporated, this area was incorporated?
But then this area, to my knowledge, I cannot guarantee you, so I don't want to
Yeah.
specifically say on the record, but I'm pretty familiar with all the PDs since this area has come within, and I don't.
It's brand new.
I think
Yeah,
it's,
It's so new that there hasn't been any yet.
right, well,
But
and I
PDs
think
within
there's
a local historic district isn't outside of the norm.
Yep. Sure. So I think it's unusual. They're not prevalent, put it that way, in terms of across the historic district. By the extension of the historic district into area that had just recently been designated, you're gonna capture some, so it's gonna skew the view. But I think the PD is an unusual tool to use within the historic district to try to put a lot onto a lot, to put and operate outside what would otherwise be the typical constraints. So let me switch gears. You talked about the existing structure, the expansion. I was wondering, is that a garage? You said it's a carport.
So it's a carport, part of it is a carport, and Andy, the architect, is here, he can, if you want to speak to that. He's probably gonna be better than me.
And one car is going to be parked on the grass?
Correct.
Is that permittable?
Well, and I would just like to speak to
Okay.
that. The reason we did that is there's a protective radius around that tree that we're preserving in the back. So for that parking spot that we're parking outside of the carport, we're gonna do, some kind of pervious.
Like a gravel or something?
Yeah, like a gravel or
Okay.
something. If we had put a footprint, it would have interfered with the protective radius.
So, my name is Andy Pina with Modular Architecture and Interiors. What you see here is essentially, it's not the true denomination, I guess, of a carport. A carport, in most, people's eyes is basically a structure that has, can be aluminum or, somewhat cheaply made. And it has a roof, over it, and it has maybe 3 or 4 columns, it doesn't matter. What we're proposing is essentially a second floor addition with, an open space underneath where you can, actually park your car, at least one of them. If you notice, this connection over here, in order for us to be able to separate the new structure from the historical designated structure, we're proposing a very minimal bridge, if you will, which is made, essentially by storefront window. I don't know if I'm supposed to get into these kind of details, but to answer your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering what
okay,
that structure
yes,
was.
yes.
So that's helpful.
It would be designed like you would have a typical garage apartment above with the parking underneath. So it's partially open, so anyway, it's typical of what happens throughout the Hyde Park area.
Why not an enclosed garage?
We could. We could enclose it. In all honesty, we have grown to, a little, I guess, opposed to garage doors. It's very hard to make them look good.
Okay.
So, but, again, that's
They
all.
also become enclosed storage areas as opposed to functioning garage space. If you leave it open, it's not as likely to become an enclosure for storing whatever. And then you end up, as one of the neighbors pointed out, then you push the car back out and it's not functioning as a parking space anymore.
Switching gears, so what's happening, I apologize if you think you stated this, about a fence between the two, the existing contributing structure and now the new structure. What's happening between them, or what are you proposing between them? Is there a fence,
Well,
grass,
they called out,
landscaping?
we'll put whatever fence that was called out. We will remove the PVC and put appropriate fence per the, historic district guidelines and ARC recommendation. We'll provide with whatever sort of fence you guys recommend.
We hadn't gotten to that detail yet because we were here, basically for the recommendation regarding the rezoning.
Understood.
But all of those details will come forward, in the future.
I'm just, I was, agree. I was curious more about the ground cover there.
But we will immediately, we'll be removing the reference to PVC fence.
Okay. Will a curb cut be required on Oregon to create that, where the new structure is gonna be embedded?
Is there a curb there?
Yeah.
Is that a granite curb currently?
There's a radius curb, the property in question is here.
Yep.
There's a radius curb on that block.
Is it granite?
Looks
It's
like
not granite.
No.
Looks like concrete.
It's concrete.
Okay. You know how I feel about new curb cuts in the historic district. Couple of other questions, sorry. So, coming back to the Sanborn map, Ron, you laid out kind of the rationale for the history that the Sanborn map reflects, right, with a higher degree of density than we typically see. And I think what just jumps out at me is that you're right on the interior blocks, but it looks like at each corner, with the exception of the Orleans and Azeel corner, that the corners are preserved. They're sort of kept wide open, all along Horatio, down on the southern part of Oregon, Orleans. You've got, I guess the Willow is filled in, but it seems like the opening is the more prevalent approach, and closing in those corner lots was exception. That was just my observation.
Commissioner, if I could point out, each of those corners, if you look in the northeast corner, you've got 4 houses. I'm sorry. There's 4 units here, there's 3 here, 3 here, 2, and then this is where that other structure was developed. So there's,
Right, but if
those
you look.
corners are heavily intensive in.
Well, some are heavily intensive and some are not.
Well, in
So
that
it's just-
block, which is your reference block.
Well, I'm looking at Oregon, Horatio, Orleans, I'm looking at everything that we're seeing on Sanborn. It's a mix. I'm gonna move on to just the last couple of questions. We already spoke about, the green space allocation. Is what you laid out in terms of those, where you're meeting or exceeding, as you said, is only by virtue of going to a PD? If you were not.
You would still
let's-
meet them.
Well, not with two, you wouldn't be able to put 2 parcels. I mean,
No,
two,
the issue-
you wouldn't be able to put 2 structures.
You would have more green space, but the issue is that regarding the tree that they're trying to preserve, and Natural Resources insisted that the ground cover be gravel or some other stable, type of product, we would still be meeting green space. There are no waivers being requested for green space.
Right, but you don't need waivers because.
We don't need
You're
that.
going for a PD. That's,
Well, but you would still have to state them on the site plan if you had a waiver for green space. There'll be no waiver requested for green space.
and you're achieving that with the one gravel parking
You have
space?
to
Is
ask
that
the architect.
part of how you're achieving that?
No, we're not achieving it through the gravel parking.
Okay.
We are achieving it through essentially pervious space.
Okay. Sorry, so. Last point. So you have some members of the public as well as the representatives from the Historic Hyde Park Association and the Spanish Town Creek Association all objecting. They, to be sensitive to the points that are being made and recognizing you have a number of letters of support, right? So there's a balance. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what interactions you've had with the homeowners in opposition or the associations?
Sure.
In terms of at least trying to find some common ground?
Candidly speaking, I reached out, and it's part of the packet. I had correspondence with Pat Cimino a couple weeks ago. He said he was going to meet with the boards and communicate back to me kind of the outcome of their discussions. I didn't get that communication. The next thing I saw was the 3 letters of opposition uploaded into the record. I reached out again a few days ago, basically saying, hey, look, I would like to either meet or get on the phone prior to the Monday meeting to see if there's something that we can do to adjust what we're proposing to get your support. Now, candidly speaking, the letter that we got was like opposition on every ground, right? So it's kind of hard to negotiate a resolution to blanket opposition on all points, but I was willing to have that conversation because I think it's always worth it. When I kind of requested a few days ago that, you know, to have that conversation prior to today's hearing, I mean, Pat can speak to this if he has the opportunity to speak to it. He said, well, first, before we have the conversation move forward, tell me how this contributes to historic fabric, right? That was sent to me, I think, Thursday or Friday. The correspondence is in there. At that point, I said, look, like, I don't want to have to give justification to hop on a phone call or have a meeting. I wanted to move forward and have the meeting, have the discussion, and see what we can do to improve the project and meet the requirements. But we've already outlined ways, you know, and the neighborhood groups, I respect them. They've done a lot for the beautification and maintenance of the neighborhood. I understand their intentions are great, but we uploaded a lot of documentation in Acela, which they have access to, that showed that this was a very, this project is actually restoring the historic fabric, in my opinion. If I may, I would like to point out one very important thing that shows the two structures, the existing contributing structure that's on site, existing at the same time as that structure that was demolished was. The structures were there at the same time at a certain point in time. If I may, and it's in your packet, but again, I don't have numbers on the packet, so let me pull it up, and then maybe you guys can find that page as well. So this was fun. It was like a goose chase. I bought this lot in January, and I went down to library and pulled out the POC directory, and I went to the property appraiser, and so on, right? So if you pull up, if you see the 1991 property appraiser card, right, you can see that this more square structure, right? Sorry, yeah, perfect. That's the existing green home on site. That's the existing contributing structure, okay? 402 South Oregon, right? Now, at the same time, at 402 South Oregon, there was a shotgun-style home that existed there. Now, if you note there, you'll see the dimensions are 13 feet wide by approximately 34 feet deep. Now, if you go back to our site plan, and this was all very intentional, I worked very hard with Ron and Andy on this. I'm gonna go back to, excuse me. I just wanna show how we kind of configured the proposed new residence with that existing historic structure in mind, right? So, again, referring back to that, you know, 12 feet by 34 deep. Now, if you look at, can you zoom in on this, Steve? Just like that? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Can you guys see that?
It's very blurry.
Blurry? Okay. If you can pull up the site plan as well, just to kind of refer back here. So, okay, that's perfect. Okay. So if you see, we have 56 feet of total depth for the proposed new construction residence. But if you look, the front, right, is kind of in that shotgun vernacular. And if you look on the elevations, the front of the home is meant to read very similar to the single-story shotgun home that was there intentionally. And it's not exact, but the depth of the front first floor that's meant to read like the single-story shotgun home that was there before. If you look, those dimensions are 56.4 minus 28.3. Not exactly, those are inches. So that's about 28 feet. So it's very close in dimensions to what was historically there. We purposely did not put the second story, make it into like a big box. We purposely recessed that second story. So like other contributing structures in the neighborhood, it looked like this little tiny house was here all along. You're on the street level. You see that single-story home from the street level. You see that little addition popping out in the back. And actually, he couldn't make it here today, but we actually toured one of the contributing structures, Constantine. He wrote a letter of support, right? And we toured his home, and his home has the exact kind of same configuration that we're kind of looking to achieve here. We tried to make it read like historic structure with an addition, even though it's a brand new residence.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional information. Just to finalize that last question, so you were not able to get back together with either of the association representatives?
They didn't respond.
Okay,
Yeah,
understood.
and I also reached out to
Understood.
Leah with the other association, and she respectfully said that kind of the comments that they sent kind of served to illustrate what they
Understood.
wanted, and they didn't really have much to add.
Okay,
I don't know if
thank
I get
you.
a chance to rebut some of those comments later, but I gladly will take that one.
Thank you
And we're
for
on
those,
their comments.
Yeah, correct, I know.
that's all my questions,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Great, thank you. All right, I've just got a couple. Referencing your setback exhibit,
Yes,
you've got your neighbor to the south, and the new construction will be on block 2, unless I'm mistaken. And you're not showing the new, because it doesn't exist, but just to be clear, you're saying the front of your front porch will be 9'4", so that will be the exact face of the house to the south?
are you talking about the existing contributing structure?
No, I'm talking about the new one.
New
It's not
construction.
shown on this.
Okay, the new construction, the porch that's 9 feet from the front property line, you're asking if it's the same as,
I just want to make sure I'm reading this right.
Yeah,
So
it's
the new one will be
aligned
9
with the
so it'll
contributing-
be aligned with the front face of the existing house to
And
the
that's,
south.
Correct.
that's the porch, not the main structure.
That's right, okay, just making sure, all right. Because then I see on your site plan, you've got a 15:6 dimension that lines up with the front of the house itself, okay.
And we,
That makes sense,
everything in the front was aligned with the other adjacent properties.
got it. So then let's go back to the existing zoning, the RM12. I understand you couldn't have 2 individual structures. You could have multiple units in one structure, and that's the RM12 zoning, correct?
That's a zoning question.
No, you cannot be considered for 2 units in the current RM12 zoning district, whether it's in 2 separate units or one structure.
Okay,
Let me clarify an earlier statement. The land use allows you to go to RM18, which would be a Euclidean zoning. But because we had unique site configurations, we were requesting the PD so that we could enable that unit to be built. But it would be allowed under the land use designation.
got it. So I just want to clarify one more item, and this is either for the applicant or staff. Show me exactly the difference between the setback that you're proposing and the setback for RM12. How much are we changing? So specifically, I'm asking for Azeel and Oregon, those 2 setbacks.
So what the current setbacks would be required for RM12?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so for RM12, you would be required a front setback of 25 feet, side of 7, rear of 15, corner of 7, and then a maximum building height of 35 feet.
So for the contributing structure against Azeel, it's showing a setback, it's currently got a setback of 9'6", so that's,
Does not conform.
does not conform, okay.
It's greater than what's required.
Got it. Greater than what's required. All right, so then on Oregon, for the new structure, you've got 15'6" from the face. What is it currently? That's the 25 feet?
That would be 25.
Got it.
Are you still
Okay.
considering this the corner?
This would be the front, so,
No, I know, but are you still considering that to be the corner?
no, this would be.
Ron Vila, staff for Historic Preservation. In the historic districts, the front yard setback is established by zoning, but there is a section of the code that we do front yard averaging. So that's why that diagram was illustrated there, to bring it forward to match the cadence of the block. So although it talks about 25-foot setback, we look at the fabric that's on that block.
That's a good point.
One other point that I'd like to make is that the parking for this new unit was recessed so that the cars would not exceed the frontage of the building.
Right.
So it would be recessed back to the edge of the building line.
I don't know if this is helpful for you to see, but these are the RM12 required setbacks. These are the proposed setbacks for lot 1, the proposed setbacks for lot 2.
Okay.
But as Ron pointed out, that those are not meaningful with the context of a historic district.
Absolutely. Okay, with that being said,
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Asad Sheikh. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay, so what you showed to us, the two properties side by side, where did that come from?
That's certified copies from the property appraiser office in downtown Tampa.
Those are historic property records.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and then I have a question for Ron, real quick. Thank you. So under, what is it, section 27-113A2J, we're supposed to review and recommend reasonable land use change to the extent necessary to preserve historical integrity. So, in your estimation, what's the historical, what are we preserving? Are we preserving when there was this one building from the 1930s? Are we preserving the one structure that was where the new structure is going to be, but that other structure wasn't there until years later? So I'm kind of feeling like we're going back to this time and not the most recent history, which is there's one structure on this piece of property and not adding another structure, you know, from before. So what's the history that we're supposed to be preserving?
I think you have to look back at the pattern that's established in this particular block. That this isn't precedent setting anywhere else. Dobyville is unique in its own right, and I believe this block is unique in its own right. If you look at the setbacks that are established from the front, if you look at just the pure size of the structures, if you look at the setbacks of the structures that are illustrated in 1929 to the property line, you know, I know they have reduced setbacks currently there, and they have to meet current building code that stipulates that there are no architectural elements within 2 foot of the property line. I don't know if these structures illustrated here meet that or not. These are probably grandfathered in, but moving forward, if this PD is approved or give a favorable recommendation, goes to the city council. If it gets voted up, you'll see it again. As it moves forward, we meet with other departments within the city to make sure that code is met. So although the structure appears to be closer to the property line than what code allows, which is accurate, they still have to meet building and fire separation when it comes forward.
But the determination today will essentially give our stamp of approval for a second unit on that piece of property.
We're making a recommendation to city council.
The recommendation will be reviewed by council.
Okay.
And if it's approved. But you talk about the historic pattern there, but you talk about going back. That's why I tried to provide you this one. I don't know if I was clear or not, but this is the block in question here. And on the corners only, those parcels have been subdivided for whatever reason. There's been a structure that has a different orientation. All these face this way. The one that's on the back of this parcel faces north. This one faces west. The one in the back faces south. Same thing here. This one faces south. And then over here, you see that this lot was subdivided for whatever reason, and these face to the north.
So put up the Sanborn map one more time, please. Okay.
You see it?
All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's all I have.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any more questions. Applicant has 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I think, you know, the staff has been clear, and you heard from the architect and the owner how we have endeavored to meet the code. This is not establishing a new pattern, it's reestablishing an old pattern. And consistent with the design guidelines, we've worked with transportation, we've worked with tree and landscaping, we worked with historic preservation and zoning to develop a plan that was as consistent as it could be. And the 3-foot setback on the side is typical for what happens in Dobyville. I'm not sure historically how Dobyville got built, because even at the time, it didn't meet typical codes. It was a very intensive area, And it basically was a compound that was developed for working-class people. And the reason it was located there was easy access to transportation. They could either walk or ride buses to basically the homes that were surrounding the area, which was either Palmacia or the larger homes in Hyde Park. That was their purpose. And what this does is it mimics exactly what used to be in Dobyville. It doesn't destroy Dobyville, it enhances it. And it enhances it with new construction that looks like the other buildings that surround it. Whether or not somebody parked on the street for a special event for Christmas or whatever is not the criteria. The professional staff, your professional staff have come forward and said it's consistent. When it comes back to you, hopefully, with a successful rezoning, you will have every opportunity to discuss design. What we're asking for today is your acceptance of this finding. Is it consistent and sufficient enough to go forward to the city council with a recommendation of approval? Now, it's unfortunate that when we reached out to the HOAs that they wanted to allow the documents that they submitted to stand on their own without further discussion. We're still willing to have those discussions before it goes to council, if that's their wishes. Alleging that we don't meet green space, and we showed you we did, that we didn't have enough parking. We showed you we did that too. So we have the green space, we have the parking. We're not asking for an exception to what the development pattern already is. And the Sanborn maps clearly show this is not an exceptional request. It is consistent with everything around there, including the block phase. It's not a subdivision. It's not, I'm just going through the notes that I made. It doesn't destroy any of the contributing structures. It enhances them. We do meet the transportation. We sat in a development review committee meeting with them. And what you see is a reflection of both the city transportation staff and the historic preservation staff and zoning of how best to address the issue of parking. There is not a requirement for a visitor space. If there were, we would have addressed that too, but throwing that in there is not part of this discussion. Let's see what else. It's not an inappropriate infill. It's not a change in the land use, not a change in development pattern. It's not precedent setting. It establishes what was previously developed in Sanborn as shown there. There are sidewalks. I don't know where that comment came from. You can't eliminate sidewalks. You either pay the in lieu fee, which one of your commissioners is very well aware of. You either pay the fee or you build a sidewalk. And so there are no connecting sidewalks, but it's still a requirement. And you cannot exempt that. They didn't mention stormwater and drainage, but there are no exceptions for stormwater and drainage. You have to meet those codes. The only waiver, we're not asking for green space waivers. We're not asking for anything like that that would be triggering some other requirement. Anything else?
And I just wanted to just respond to the comment on, we don't want to go back to the way, the lots were split. What are we preserving with Dobyville? Dobyville is small houses on irregular lots. Some of those small houses had additions in the rear to expand the living space for today's standards, right? If we just add to the so if you look at the fabric of this block, the width between our existing structure and the adjacent one is the biggest width on Oregon and on Orleans. We are literally fitting in something where there ought to be something, and that's it. We don't want to do another mansion here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we're going to close the public portion of this hearing, and we were going to move on to discussion. Start on my left.
Well, I commented before, I appreciate the effort that's here. I actually appreciate Creative Housing Solutions. I do think it's the right location for greater density. I'm just not comfortable with the PD being introduced in this area for the reasons that I stated, that it's the only way necessary to make this work. And I think it introduces a new, sort of a scenario that we haven't encountered before, and I think that's problematic. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I feel that the requesters have made a very reasonable case for this configuration at this location. It is always difficult for us to address these edge conditions in the historic districts. And this is a new, it's a new expansion. It has very intensive development across the street that we cannot be changed. But again, that does not set precedent. But it is not I do not feel it is our role also to limit densification which responds so well to the requirements in terms of parking and setbacks in the historic district. That's my feeling.
So, question for the chair. Are we able to request that this matter be continued and ask the parties the objecting parties and the owner to speak and come back and see if any progress has been made before any sort of final recommendation is given or not?
I think we could reopen the public hearing to make that request.
The public hearing is closed. We can reopen the public hearing if you'd like to inquire of the applicant as to whether or not that would be acceptable. They are going to council in January, but it's later in January. It's not early in the month, so.
Okay, I'm happy to reopen the hearing. All right.
Steve Michelini, representing the petitioner, and just for the single issue of further discussion with the HOAs, we would request that this board reopen the hearing and allow us to continue that, but they would also have to commit to those discussions as well.
Dana, so technically we're not open. Do we have to vote to reopen?
Yes, you have to reopen the public hearing, and then you can take the comment from them.
Okay, so.
Someone make a motion, a second, and then.
I thought you'd already reopened the hearing.
His
I'd like to
comments,
vote
your
to
comments.
reopen.
So my comment was really based on, I'm torn as to this application and whether or not it really meets our charge, but I think it would be maybe beneficial to reopen the hearing and allow the parties, if they're gonna discuss, for them to discuss, see if they can come up with a resolution and come back before this board. And in that instance, I move to reopen it to inquire of the parties if they're willing to do that.
So my point on this.
Yes.
Is there's really one issue.
Yes.
And the PD is a tool to get around the 25-foot setback. So you either agree that the 25-foot setback is the presiding element that makes this historic, or the current setback of this block is what we should be looking at. And depending on how you feel about that, I'm not sure where neighborhood communication is gonna resolve that. Because if you don't believe that the precedent is set by the existing structures on the street.
Are they
how
all
does it get-
25?
Well, no, it's the fact that his presentation today, they're proposing it to be in line with the other ones.
Right.
So this project doesn't happen if you
Deny
require the 25. But my point being is, I'm not sure what the discussion is going to be, what the compromise will be. Because if you make them do the 25, there is no project. If you believe historically this is the way it should look, there's no more communication that needs to be had. Because what I'm looking at is it seems like they've met all of the objections that were in these letters. They've met the natural resources, they've had the sidewalks. So again.
Yeah, I think under the reading of this section that we're governed by, that we're charged with reasonable land use change to the extent necessary to preserve historical integrity, that what we're preserving right now is one lot with one home. And that's how it's been now for years, and we're looking at an older map that had one structure, a more gunshot structure, without this other structure next to it. And what they're relying on is the neighboring home that also has, a smaller frontage, but went all the way to the alley. So I don't think you can use that as to say, well, that supports your having to find that you're preserving the historical integrity, because this lot's different. It doesn't go all the way to the back alley because there's another structure. Then they rely on the other structure, the other parcel that's got the 4. But to the point of some of the questioning, not all the other corners have that much density. So if you're looking at what is the historical integrity that we're preserving, it hasn't been, I don't think it has been fully shown that adding another structure to this piece of property is really preserving the integrity of that neighborhood. And so before this board maybe makes a final ruling that either is going to allow the structure or not allow the structure, which is really what this is all coming down to, is whether or not another structure can be added to that lot, is do we allow an opportunity for the owner and the neighborhood to talk one more time to see if there's some resolution. Maybe there's no resolution. If the rest of the commissioners believe it's not worth them talking, my feeling is that from what I've heard, that we're not preserving the integrity, that the integrity has been one lot, one home.
Sure, no, fair point. Dennis?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Just want to kind of chime in on the discussion of the period that you should be considering about when you're dealing with preserving the integrity. So the period of historic significance on Hyde Park is 1886 to 1933. So that's the prominent period that the area is being recognized for. I do want to just clarify that this is not a museum plan that we're dealing with. This is a living and growing neighborhood, historic neighborhood that is expected to change over time. But we talk in preservation about neighborhoods, historic neighborhoods, having a sense of place. It's kind of a rather esoteric comment about maintaining the look and feel of a neighborhood. That's not necessarily freezing that plan or that development evolution in a particular year and not allowing it to change. If that were correct, your design guidelines wouldn't accommodate new forms of architecture. So it's about having sort of a seamless development philosophy as neighborhoods continue to grow and evolve. So I think that in this particular, I hear what you're wrestling with, and I think it gets a little bit beyond what the purpose of this commission is in this particular process. And that's to evaluate the application that's before you and to make a decision that's in accordance with the section that you have. If the owner or agent feels that it's necessary to go back to the neighborhood and discuss and explain details, then they certainly can make that request to you. That would be continued tonight to a future public hearing. And they would come back, perhaps in January and then, could finish the presentation and have you make a decision. But it's not a final decision in the sense that you're granting the rezoning. You're making a recommendation about your particular area of jurisdiction to city council. City council takes into consideration a lot of other factors, and they can weigh the public level of support or lack of support more relevant to their particular deliberation.
Thank you. Now, with that, you would still like to reopen the public hearing and have the,
We don't have to, but I would not vote in favor. I mean, my general sense is I don't think it meets the historic. Because if you look at the records that they provided, the side-by-side, the gunshot, if you look at it, it was 1933, I think, and the larger one was 1955. So it looks like there was one. If you're going to the 1930s, it looks like there was one. So we don't have to reopen. I turn it to you for comment.
Commissioners, we're in discussion. I can still comment, right?
They have not reopened the public hearing. There's a motion on the floor to reopen the public hearing, but there hasn't been a second or a vote.
So we
Mary?
cannot, at this point, request a continuance?
You can, Dennis can speak to that for you if that's what you'd like to do.
and Dana, do we know if Commissioner Hammond is returning?
Well, yeah, we'll come back.
Okay. We do with 4 of us.
Okay, in an effort to try to maybe further refine some of the discussion that's happening, they are requesting a continuance to January 6th ARC public hearing. And that's a request made by the agent with respect to the owner's property and application.
Okay, so to make sure I don't trip all over myself since we're closed.
Withdraw the motion that's on the floor, and then you may proceed with a new motion.
I withdraw the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn, so then we need a motion to accept the continuance. Is that correct, Dana?
I move to accept the continuance made by the applicant.
So we're going to grant the continuance for the public hearing, January 6, 2025 at
Wait.
5:30 PM.
She
That's
moved
the
it.
motion.
It
That's the
hasn't been
motion.
seconded.
Now we need, do we,
Oh,
That was the motion in full.
sorry.
Do we have some
looking for a second?
assurance of your name?
I second the motion.
Okay, any discussion on the continuance?
Yes, so just discussion on it, just to telegraph a little bit, I think, to be, I hope, helpful.
We can make it later.
I
on this.
agree generally with Commissioner Ketchum's approach in grappling with some competing interests here. I strongly support understanding the perspective of the associations and the neighborhood residents who are in opposition, and how that can be reconciled, if at all. It cannot always be, but an attempt to is always favorable. So that, just to telegraph my perspective. And a procedural question, you said that this is calendared at council in January, so Jan 6th, we would be hearing it prior to that, I presume, and still enable our recommendation to
Yes,
move forward.
it is calendared from my records from the Planning Commission, January 16th at City Council. So your recommendation will be included in the packet that goes to City Council on that date.
Is
So
the timing?
just
is
to
there
clarify,
sufficient
they were
timing?
on that track that hasn't been set on that agenda, so they have some flexibility.
We can ask for a later date.
Okay, any other discussion on
Thank
the
you.
motion that's on the floor? All right, seeing none, all in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can move on to the second case.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. The next item on your agenda this evening is an application in the Seminole Heights Historic District. This is a request for an addition to the primary structure and site improvements. The existing building on this property is a contributing structure to the historic district, built circa 1923. It's located at 5809 North Branch Avenue at the corner of Branch Avenue and Clifton Street. And you can see that in green on the district map there in front of you. It's in the northern part of the district. Here's the 1920s Sanborn map showing the location of the subject property. Again, at the southeast corner of Clifton and Branch. And then this is the present-day aerial map of that same area. This is the front of the structure. So here we're facing this is the west side of the structure. We're looking here at the west and the north elevations. And here you can see the south elevation. And this is the rear of the property. This is the building across Clifton Street. So it would be directly to the north of the subject site. This is the building directly to the south of the subject site. And this is the building across the street, across Branch Avenue to the west. This is a view looking north along Branch Avenue. And this is the view looking south, so the subject site would be on your left in this photo. This is looking east along Clifton Street. And then looking west along Clifton. That concludes the photo presentation. So at this time, we can ask the applicant to present the request.
Good evening. My name is Alan Dobbs, 5502 North Cherokee Avenue. I'm the agent for this project, for the owner. This house has quite a history. It, along with two other structures, have been abandoned for, I believe, over 20 years. So when it went up for sale, there was a lot of interest in this property because it's central in the historic district, right near the garden center. And a lot of developers, contractors, flippers wanted to get at this and tear the structure down, but it's a contributing structure. So fortunately, it was preserved. A neighbor across the street, my client, he's the one that purchased the property because he wanted to control the development for this property. So basically, he's looking at modifying the existing structure and adding on to it for the highest and best use. And in Seminole Heights, that's a single family home that will accommodate a young or growing family, and also have an accessory structure possibly in the future, which is a historic pattern in the neighborhood. The lot does not conform to the original plat in the neighborhood, and the orientation was changed, but this is the original lot when it was subdivided many, many years ago. So it is a lot of record. It's less than 50 feet wide, and it's a little over 138 feet deep. So because of the narrow width, we're allowed to have reduced side yard setbacks. So we have a interior side setback on the south side. On the north side, we have a side street setback, and then on the west, we have the front build-to line, which is, we're not altering that in any way. And then, of course, we have the rear. Part of developing the rear is we want to preserve as much green space as possible, but also accommodate the additional living space that's required. We're adding approximately 792 square feet on the first floor, this crosshatched blue area is new condition space, and also a porch. We did the porch on the side here, not on the rear, to preserve green space in the back, and it is on a corner lot, so that's why we have the porch on that side. And then the second floor is 421 square feet. The additional space that we're adding is a family room, new kitchen, and a ground floor bedroom. There currently is no bedroom on the first floor and no full bathroom. There's a half bath underneath the stair. The only full bath is upstairs. And then also there's I think it's on the pictures, there's a rear one-story element that a tree fell on and is in very bad disrepair, so we're removing that. We actually have staff approval to remove that already. So that's going to be the where we're basically going to add to the structure. Another thing with the site that I wanted to mention is planning for the future accessory structure, which is on corner lots typically in the back, and you access it from the side street. So the design solution that we did, and I'll get into the floor plans in a little bit, but just sort of talking about the site, is because we have a larger than normal setback on the south side, we're projecting out, so we're offsetting new and existing. On the north side, the second floor actually steps back. You'll see that in the elevations, but the first floor steps out. We did that because of the space that we needed to accommodate, but we're not projecting out any further than this existing element here, so we're maintaining the side street build-to line. And so this is the two-story addition, and then on the back is the one-story addition that includes the bedroom, like a guest suite in this area, and then the porch. So we've maximized plenty of room back here for any future development. If they want to do a pool or anything like that. This is sort of this is the parking for one vehicle and the parking for another vehicle. We have ribbon driveways. We have a standard concrete curb cut. Transportation is okay. With all this, future accessory structure can be 2 stories, can be in this footprint, and we can maybe do an L shape if we want to accommodate extra space. The setbacks are a little over 9 feet here, so that this and this are lining up, but they're broken by this 2-story element, which has a reduced setback of just under 7 feet. There's no fences on the property except a fence along here, existing wood fence, so we're gonna put back a wood fence that was here, that was taken down, but we're putting it back here. My clients in the future may do something when they develop the site, but this is the only fence that's included with this application. There's existing brick sidewalk that goes up to this front porch, the main front entrance, but it has a very attractive side entry, so we're gonna do a matching brick sidewalk up to that side entry. One of the comments from transportation and for land development was that we're required to do a sidewalk with any development that's improving the existing structure by more than 50%. So they said we need to do a sidewalk on both sides of the property. So I drew 2 sidewalks, but I would like to talk about the north sidewalk along Clifton because that is not the pattern of the neighborhood. You can go down, I've lived and worked in Seminole Heights for over 30 years now. The pattern is sidewalks run north-south, sidewalks do not run east-west. A perfect example of that is the Garden Center, which is 1 lot away. They did a significant improvement to the Garden Center. They did not add any sidewalks on the north or south side. So typically, land development staff does not require that you do a sidewalk if sidewalks are not already existing, but they tend to kind of force people's hands. So I would like for the board, when we get to the point, to maybe not recommend that we do the in lieu of fee instead of actually building a sidewalk. I think that's it for the site. You know, the air conditioning elements are here, so they're screened. The form I talked about, this is a 2-story element, this is a 2-story element, but the ridge is lower than the existing, and then this is the 1-story element here. On the existing house, actually, I have the demolition plans on the next slide, a little bigger. So you can see on the first floor, the only alterations we're making is removing the kitchen because that's going to be relocated. This is going to turn into like a utility room. We're going to remove this window. It's going to become an exterior door or side entrance. And then this element's going to be removed, and then all the rest of this house is going to be preserved. The second floor, we're going to demolish this bathroom and reconfigure it a little bit, but it's all going to be in the same footprint generally. And then this portion gets removed. I'm going to take you through the floor plan just because it helps explain, you know, the elevations and massing. So this shows the kitchen being converted to a utility room, which has washer, dryer, laundry sink, side entrance, electric here, and a door that goes to the main living area. The way families live now, especially in the old houses, they have their formal living room, but they really desire a more sort of informal great room or family room. So that's what we have. We have the original living up front and the original dining, and then this is where the new sort of great room is with the sitting area here, and then the kitchen over here. And then this is a a guest suite right here that has a full bath with the shower, so it can easily be accessible, because with the shower it can be an ADA accessible bathroom in case they have a parent or somebody that needs to be accommodated. And then a large porch, 10 feet by 22 feet, that sort of addresses the backyard and the side yard as well. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is this shows where we're bumping out only on the first floor, and then bumping out here on the second floor. Bumping out here on the south side. On the second floor, all the bedrooms remain the same. The bathroom gets reconfigured so it's a little more flexible, so that you have the tub shower combination with toilet in one room, and then you have a large vanity and linen area. So really we're just adding the wall and redoing fixtures. That's the original door. This is a window that's going to be turned into a door. And then you have the master suite, and then here you notice that this steps back, and then you have the first floor addition. The form of the roof is a hip roof to maintain the existing form. However, this part right here projects out and lower, so that even though it's projecting out, the roof is lower, so it becomes more subordinate. I altered these elevations a little bit to sort of highlight the new versus the existing. So this is the existing. There's an original casement window that we're going to try and incorporate into the new addition. All the rest of this none of it's worth preserving. So this has stucco with the brick band and then shingles. But I took all the pattern textures off to kind of highlight the additions. So this is the one-story part that projects out, and then this is the two-story part that projects back. You can see the bit of roof there. And then this is the three-bay porch that has all stucco columns. The columns in the beam are like 9 to 10 inches thick. Just pick up on the front porch. Similar but yet different. But we're going to maintain brick. This is going to be a thin brick, and then we're going to do a concrete on the porch, and then you can see the fenestration there. Another interesting detail is we have exposed rafter tails on the back, and to pick up on what we had on the front porch, but also this part that was removed had exposed rafter tails. So that's sort of the pattern that we're maintaining. The soffit up here, it's just a flat soffit, so we're gonna match that. The front elevation is really all this is the addition in the back, and then there's a part here that you don't even really see. So that sort of shows the roof beyond on the other side of this little side gable. This is the addition way back towards the back. The rear is obviously where the most substantial work is being done. So The porch gets removed, these windows get removed. This one turns into a door to access the second floor addition. The materials on the addition on the back, I mentioned the brick, thin brick we're going to use, which is going to be similar to the existing. This shows where the finished floor is for reference. This is going to be a raised stucco sill band. It's kind of a common detail in some of the houses in the neighborhood, stucco houses. So it becomes a water table or sill or sub-sill for the window, and then stucco to match existing. And then all the windows are cased in wood. That's kind of set flush with the stucco, but I'll show you details on that. We're going to do a trim band here that is the head casing. And it just goes all the way around. Again, it's sort of differentiating new from existing and sort of creates a regulating line there. And then again, the rafter tails, flat soffit. This has a bed molding around, so we're going to pick up on that. And then these new windows are going to match the existing windows. I'm going to come back to the windows, but while I'm here, I'll go ahead and point out some of the details. I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but this shows the wood windows with the 2-inch high band or stucco sub-sill. The regular window has a wood sill that's similar to the existing. The jamb has a 1-inch casing, and then it has this back band, which is really just a lattice strip. Interesting. And then the head casing is similar to the side casing, but has a drip cap. And then the spread mall is 7 inches, and the thickness matches the side casing. And then you can kind of see the elevation there. So the sill projects a little bit beyond each side. This has the back band or lattice strip, and then the casing is 5.5 inches wide. This is the south elevation, which faces the interior setback. I don't have a picture of the original door on the back, the portion that was removed, but it had a door similar to this, so we're going to try and pick up on that door. We're going to maintain the head height of the window that was there, so we're going to just do a fixed transom there to maximize light into that room. And there'll be a little concrete landing here, and then there's the 2-story element that projects out. These are kitchen windows, these are bathroom windows, so that's why the proportions are different. And then here, that's a high window in the bathroom, and then these are windows on either side of the bed, and then there you can see the stucco sill. And there you can see the addition in reference, or next to the existing house. Excuse my sketching. I had a few computer problems today, so I didn't get a chance to blow these up or note them, but this sort of shows just some building sections. So we're going to do a crawl space, and I had mentioned the brick. This is the height of the windows, and then the trim and the sill are what set the band heights on the 1-story addition. It's all frame wall. It's interesting about this house is it's stucco on frame, but I would have bet good money that it was stucco on terracotta block, because there's very little cracking of the stucco, and usually wood frame houses that have stucco, they have significant cracks through the years, and water gets in and they deteriorate very quickly. But this house is actually in very, very good shape for being abandoned as long as it was. So all the walls are framed, first and second floor. I mentioned the flat soffit. We're matching the overhangs. They're 30 inches. And then there's the 1-story addition. That's conditioned space. And then this is the porch with the concrete slab, and then doors that are similar to the existing front door. And then that's the little window that we're going to relocate. The section, continuous concrete block stem wall that I didn't point out on the elevations, but you probably noticed the house had a continuous stem wall, but then it had brick on the lower portion of it. So we're going to do thin brick, which is essentially real brick, and then a suspended wood floor, and then stucco on frame. We're matching the existing ceiling height and floor structure height, and then the second floor Same thing, we're doing 2x6 instead of 2x4 because we want a little bit stiffer wall. And then this shows the overhang with the bed molding, 30-inch overhang. We're gonna match the existing soffit, which is basically 1x4 V-groove. And then a continuous wood fascia with the 1x2 drip. This is a detail a lot of people get wrong. They put the flashing right up against the fascia. That's wrong. You put the flashing over a 1x2. A lot of these houses would have like a crown molding and a drip, but this one didn't have it, so we're not gonna do that. And then the 4 and 12 pitched roof, which we're matching. Here's some pictures of, I know Elaine already showed these pictures, but I just want to go to point out a few things. Obviously, you see the existing windows. I have some details of that, the exposed rafter tails. The porch beam and the wall are the same thickness, but then the columns are all thicker. We're doing the thick beam, but we're not going to do the wall. We're not going to do the big columns, so we're a little bit different than the original front porch. This is the existing side elevation. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Facing the side street. So we're going to have a little brick walk there. This is the part that's coming off. And also, I know it doesn't, the board, it's not within the board's preview, but we're going to move this to the other side because my client wants to do underground service, so we're going to do that. This shows the south elevation, and then that part that's going to be removed. The door that's here is the one that we're going to try and replicate, and then this is the rear. Again, that's all coming off. That's actually going to be where the new door is. That's the window to the existing bathroom, so that'll be closed off. This is just a little detail at the side entry. You can see the brick there. You can see the drip cap and see a little bit there of the back band element, and then the lights. And that's not the original door. That was just a temporary door that was put in, but has the brick obvious welcome walls. This shows a little bit better detail of the soffit with the bed mold and the soffit material there. So that's all going to be restored. What's nice about this house is that it can be restored pretty much as is, and then the addition be done separately, with the exception of the kitchen that's going to be converted to a utility room. This shows a little bit of a detail of the back porch that's being removed, but you can see it has aluminum windows and everything. The front door is this sort of, that light pattern we're picking up on, and then also you can kind of see the back band here element is on the door as well as the windows. This is that little, I'll call it a feature window. We're going to try and restore this window. It's weird, this back sunroom, it's all aluminum windows, but there's that one original window left in the corner. So we thought it'd be kind of interesting to preserve that element. This shows a little bit, try and zoom in some more. Just the typical first floor window. You can kind of see again the back band, the spread mold for the weight pocket. This is the typical first floor window. Again, the drip cap, the lattice strip, and then the sill. It's actually kind of interesting how they did that because it covers that joint between the wood and the stucco. And then you can pick up there on some of the existing lighting. I'm not sure if that's original, but I think it's period appropriate. Then this is the second floor window. You can see the back band goes and dies into the bed molding, and then you see the casing. I'm getting into some of the materials here. We're just going to go with a dimensional asphalt shingle. The eaves and soffits. Need to go through my list. Yeah, the roof overhangs, this picture sort of shows what's happening at the first floor, which is we're going to do something similar to the one-story addition in the back, and then the two-story addition will have a flat soffit similar to that. This is a detail of the brick that goes around. Notice that it's flush there. I mean, it's offset here, but it's flush here, in other areas it's flush, so that's kind of the predominant pattern. The French doors are always a challenge, getting wood doors that meet current codes, so this is a door I've presented to this board a lot. It's a fiberglass door, and what's nice about it is it has, you can see the stile and rail detail there, maybe a little bit, but it has a very fine wood texture, and it has this glazing stop, which is very similar to period exterior doors. The hardware, we're going to go with something maybe just a little bit more contemporary, but stay with like a dark bronze or something. We don't want to be too literal on copying, the existing hardware on the front door. This shows the detail of one of the windows. You can see they kind of did a sloppy job here, but it shows you how they just did a 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch batten strip or lattice strip, and then this is the sill detail, so you can see the sill projects over, and then you can see the batten strip. And so instead of this sill, it'll be stucco on the part in the back. And then this shows the wide porch beam, so the beams and columns are going to be a similar width on the back. Note the texture of the stucco, we're going to stay with that. The existing lighting, I pointed out, it's actually kind of attractive light, the way it works with the very steep roof on the side, but we're going to go with something a little bit different on the addition. This sort of has a similar cap, but it's more of a almost prairie style period, appropriate light. And then, so like on the surface of the porch ceiling, we'll do a surface mounted light like that. So just to kind of summarize, in the staff report here, I hadn't seen this before, but it talks about Secretary of Interior standards, things are recommended and not recommended. There's just like 5 points that I would like to go over, and then I'll conclude my presentation. Place functions and services required for the new use, including elevators and stairways, which are not applicable here. In secondary and non-character defining interior spaces of the historic building, rather than constructing a new addition. Basically, it's saying work with the existing structure as much as possible so you don't have to add onto it or modify it on the exterior. Well, that's just not possible. The next item is construct the addition on a secondary or non-character defining elevation. We're adding to the rear of the house, so but on the north elevation, it is sort of a secondary front. So I already addressed how we're dealing with that. Construct the addition with the least possible loss of historical materials. Again, we're only altering the surface of the back of the house, and that's it, except for the window in the kitchen. But the opening is going to be preserved. We're just turning the window into a door. The next thing is design the addition to be compatible with the historic building. Well, I feel like we've done that by using similar details, materials, massing, form, all those kind of things. And then ensure the addition is subordinate to this and secondary to the historic building. I kind of pointed out the massing where we stepped in, where we stepped out, the second floor addition, how we stepped back on the north side, but also, I don't know if you noticed the roof over the addition, the ridge, the highest ridge of the addition is actually lower than the existing ridge of the house, so we're staying less than that. So, just one last little detail. The windows that we're using, I didn't bring a window sample, but Jeld-Wen wood windows, they have a very good window. The stiles and rails are proportional to the existing. I actually had one project recently. I sent Ron's left. I sent Ron a picture of it because it was amazing how well it looked. But anyway, so these are just some of the wood window details, but some of the other details, this flat 5.5 inch casing is what we're going to be using on the windows, which I mentioned before. And then also the 7/8 inch is really more like 3/4 of an inch putty glazing. So I think I covered everything. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the Seminole Heights design guidelines, and I believe the applicant addressed the conditions that were listed in the staff report. So with that, I have no further comments, but I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing no one in the audience, we are not going to have any public comment. So we're going to move on to questions from commissioners. We'll start on my left.
Great, thank you. Mr. Dobbs, I appreciate the presentation. I know this house very well. I've seen it abandoned for years. It's very heartening to see that there will be a better future for it. I very much appreciate your detailed and thorough presentation. I know there's a couple of items on the staff report that need some follow-up, but I have no questions, just wanted to acknowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the presentation.
Great. Commissioner Myers?
There we go, yes. Excellent presentation, thank you very much. Recently, we have been looking very carefully at the suggestion from the Secretary of the Interior standards that we make certain that one can always identify the addition, so that we don't lose sight of the fact that this was originally a four-square house, and it has been Hyde Parkified with a series of really substantial additions, and it has a very beautiful floor plan that you've shown us. But I was wondering if we were to ask that you provide windows and stucco finish that was different from the original house, if you had any ideas about what you might do in that case.
Yeah, that's always a challenge, because you do want to differentiate new from existing, but you don't want it to look like you did it different, just to be different, So, like for example, if we on the addition we did less detail and didn't do any divided lights on the windows, I think that would be substantially different. Maybe if we didn't do the back band strips or something on some of the casing and trim, or something, maybe that could be a little bit different. I pointed out some of the things with the massing and form that I did to differentiate, but you're talking about details and materials and things like that. I think by the nature of the age of the house, just the stucco itself, I don't know if we're going to be able to match that exact stucco pattern. So we can certainly do a little bit of a different stucco pattern. And we've done that too with the board, where, a condition of the board is to have the stucco pattern reviewed and approved by staff. Mm-hmm. Likewise, windows, those kind of details, we can also, if the board is comfortable with that, review that by staff. One of the other details is the eave detail you saw in the existing soffit of the second floor. It looked like almost 1x3s. It had a little, like about a 1/4 of an inch between them. The eaves on on the addition, I pointed out, is 1x4 V-groove, tongue and groove. So it's similar to that, but it is different, and it's more airtight because we're going to be doing an unvented attic. The fascia, I think it would look very odd if we did anything different with the fascia, because those regulating lights, I think, are very important to maintain. But I did point out on the first floor, how we project it out, and that roof actually drops down a little bit. And then likewise, I think on the front porch, I can bring the pictures up again if y'all want to see them. Again, that's just 1x4s, but they're tight to each other. They don't have a V-groove, but what we're proposing on the addition is V-groove on the soffits between where we have exposed rafter tails. I know it's a long answer, but
Can you put the elevations up while you're answering his questions, please?
And while you're putting the elevations up, can you tell me what the floor is is it a concrete floor on the front porch, or wood?
No, that's actually a good question. I didn't point that out. It actually is a wood porch on a wood floor. It's a 1x3 or 1x4. Actually, I think it's 1x3. Tongue and groove porch. It's actually in pretty decent shape. Some of the boards around the entrance here, you know, will need to be replaced, but that's gonna be minimal restoration work. However, on the rear porch, you know, we're just gonna do concrete, yeah, because it'll be a heavily used porch, you know, maintenance. I think it'll be nice to have that, and I feel like the concrete floor kind of goes better with the stucco exterior. You want to see the elevations? I'm not sure if there's a particular one that you wanted to see or have me point out anything.
And the rear porch is not to be screened?
No, what the drawings I'm sure that y'all probably got that I submitted for the final exhibits, I like hatching the porch so it's like shaded, you know, to sort of set it off to show that it's steep, but it's always misinterpreted as screened. So I just took that out and then just showed the fenestration in the porch. But no, the porch is not going to be screened.
And it doesn't need a wall because it's not high enough off the ground, right?
No, it's actually very low. We only have, if you look at the floor plan,
It's only a foot, right?
we only have 3 steps. Actually, 3 steps here, but this will be raised up a little bit, so we only have 2 steps here. And those will be concrete steps. I don't think I pointed that out in the presentation.
Okay, no further questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice presentation. If you go back to that, the first floor plan.
Sure.
In your elevation, that door you're coming off on the utility room, I think in your elevation, you're showing steps, which would make sense, but this plan doesn't show steps.
No, so you have a step down to a slab because the exterior door, you have to have a landing. So, let me see if let me go to the. Yeah, something's off there. Yeah, it's not concrete steps. It's just a landing.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but if, I'll have to double check the height, but the intent was just to have a step down from the door and then one more step down to grade.
Gotcha.
It is outside the public realm, and also there's a fence right here, so you don't really see that door from the street.
And then that fence will screen the AC units that are gonna be right there?
Yeah, it will. I'll pull back the site plan. It's just it's a 6 foot high. Yeah, it's just a 6 foot high wood fence. I didn't provide any details on that, but it will just be this is a kind of like a board on board fence, so we'll just match the same fence. So
Okay.
it doesn't stand out.
And then you showed us the new light fixtures, but I didn't see where, are they just gonna go to that north entry?
Yeah, well, so let me go to the floor plan. So, let me get the sheets reorganized. So, yeah, there's really only gonna be a couple fixtures. So there's gonna be a surface mounted fixture here.
Okay.
And then there's gonna be a wall mounted fixture here. So the surface mounted one, I can show you that again.
No, that's fine. I remember what they looked like.
Okay.
I didn't see where they were.
Yeah, okay.
All right, and then gutters or downspouts?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, I always try and not do them because they alter the historic character. But sometimes, you know, if we do have to do them, then we'll consult with staff and, but I always try and avoid them and deal with the runoff in other ways.
Perfect. And other than that, I didn't have any other questions. It was attractive design. Any other questions from the board?
You asked us if we would like to make a recommendation about the sidewalk on the
yeah.
north.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't want us to get bogged down on that, but the transportation comments were that we did sidewalk on both sides. this is not typical on any of the east-west streets. It sounds like one of the commissioners know, is it Ms. Post? Yeah, sounds like you know Seminole Heights pretty well. So, yeah, there's very few, if any, east-west sidewalks. There are, I think down on Wilder by the high school there is, but all the other streets, especially north of Hillsborough, I can't think of a single east-west street that has a sidewalk other than on Idlewild. There may be one or two houses that has a small section. But when you drive down Central, you don't see any east-west sidewalk. So I think I would prefer us not to do a sidewalk there, but definitely do a sidewalk here, because continuing north, there is a sidewalk on the property to the north.
If you didn't put it in, would you run that brick landing all the way to the street?
No, we'd run it to the property line, because transportation probably would have issues if we ran it to the street, because there was a time when transportation was having us take out original walks that went to the street. So I think maybe to address that, maybe if the board could issue a condition that we work with staff on the termination of that brick walk on the north side, and then also the sidewalk. I just feel like if the board had some input on this, it just gives us a little more ammunition to transportation to allow us to pay into the in lieu of fee instead of actually building a sidewalk.
Sure.
Is there a curb on Clifton?
No, there's no curb on.
But there but there's one on, is there one on Branch, or are there no curbs in the area?
No, I don't think there's a curb there either.
Okay. And a question for staff, is the city promoting promoting sidewalks in all new construction, regardless of historic or not?
Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. I believe as far as sidewalks go, the standards are, that they either put them in or pay the in lieu fee, and that is the same whether it's in or not in a historic district.
It does promote a more walkable neighborhood. Right?
Absolutely, but where are you walking to? That's the thing, is there's no sidewalk, like I said, on pretty much any of the east-west streets in that area. So you have that one little section of sidewalk that doesn't go anywhere. I mean, again, I mentioned the garden center. They did a substantial improvement to the garden center, but they didn't put in sidewalks because there was it just didn't make sense to have them.
Yeah, I believe that was we think slightly differently now.
May I comment on that?
Sure.
If you don't mind?
No.
I think you're spot on that the public policy, if you will, around creating a more walkable city is to require them where they're appropriate, and it's largely associated with all new construction and so on, and so they're very much being advocated for. I think the question for us is, frankly, does our opinion matter on this? I'm not sure. It might be a question for staff or for legal, just so we're not caught around the axle on it. If we might have different opinions, it may not matter if the code requires it, and how you're able to navigate that might just be between you and the land use staff.
Right.
But I'll defer to Dennis or
Okay.
others.
Can I say one more thing on the sidewalk? Absolutely, doing anything to make the neighborhoods walkable is very desirable. I wish transportation was here, because I can say with being pretty certain their position is if there are any sidewalks on the street, block either side, then you have to put in a sidewalk, you don't have the option to pay into the lieu of fee. All I'm asking for is to have the option to pay into the in lieu of fee, so that we don't upset the pattern of the neighborhood, because again, the sidewalk doesn't go anywhere.
And I'm
but-
not sure
yeah.
that we can articulate that, but
Okay.
Dennis might know more.
Well, Dennis is going to speak.
Good evening once again, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. It's a little irregular to have the board opine on items that are codified in different sections of the code beyond your jurisdiction. I think you are entrusted with making advisory recommendations. If you want to form that into an advisory recommendation that the staff explore based on the pattern of development of this particular neighborhood, that's appropriate, but going beyond selecting an alternative that, other than what the transportation is required, isn't appropriate.
Thank you, Dennis. Any more questions for the applicant? Commissioner Moon?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Seeing no more questions, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. All right, at that, we're going to close the public hearing and move on to discussion. I'll start on my right.
I think it's very nice. I defer to you all as to whether or not we make an advisory recommendation as far as the sidewalks.
Yeah. I raised the question because the applicant had suggested that we needed to discuss it, but I think we really need to stay out of it.
I agree. I would, there is a route for him to go that way, and it's not our purview. And frankly, I think that is the push for walkability. So it all starts with one sidewalk.
Agree, appreciate the discussion being raised, but I think it's better to stay out of that. And I appreciate what he's trying to achieve, and I like the plan as it's presented and would support it for what he's got.
Let's see. I'd like to move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 25-000013 for the property located at 5809 North Branch Avenue, with the following conditions: that the applicant make a final selection on windows for the addition and the stucco finish, and submit those to the staff for approval. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Seminole Heights design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. Its massing, materiality, and placement on the site are in line with the design guidelines.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have any discussion? Okay, not seen. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it. All right, I'm looking for a motion to receive and file submitted documents and exhibits.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Involves